until they put up the rack charge. Then everybody charges their phone as they're in show. And it worked.
BRS, you know what they did? They put additional lockers in the entrance area.
It's a similar idea.
Okay, I'm going to start the learning sponsors and then we'll pick up on, which reminds me, I got to go grab a new bullet. Okay, be right there.
What I have.
That's the other book. I'll start and then you just give me. Okay, Sarah, year of learning, Sarah Alpert, in memory of her husband, Harav. Thank you. I'll give it right back. Harav Tzvi Lipa Ben Hillel, Bella and David Adler, in memory of her father, Eliyahu ben Yosef Cohen. Friends of Honey Chaifetz, Chana Shoshana ben Yosef. Friends of Jack Prince, Yaakov Yitzchak ben Shmuel Dov. Friends of Sandy Davidoff, Shulamit bat Chaim Eliyahu. Friends of Judy Cohen, Yehudit Liba bat Moshe. Friends of Dr. Netza Fransky, Hannah bat Ephraim Fischel. Gail and Leslie Kaplan, in memory of their parents, Mushka Sprinzer bat Yosef Chaim Bachava, Hanan ben Moshe Eliezer Bachana, Pesha bat Shmuel Yitzchak Alevi Vishkipora, Isra ben Yoel Moshe Cohen Bachana. Friends of Linda Katz, Hinda bat Yehoshua, Lee and Harvey Greenberg, in memory of their parents, Esther bat Eliezer, Yaakov Yosef ben Abraham, Sarah Rivka bat Baruch Yehuda, Betzal ben Abraham Alevi. Friends of Rochelle Ebner, Rachel bat Moshe. Ike and Evelyn Blachor, in memory of his sister Phyllis Pacheco, Liv Shabbat Isser. Steve and Arlene Greenberg, in memory of his father, Chaim ben Shmuel Halevi. We have a month of learning. Karen and Mel Haller, in memory of her mother, Malka Rachel bat Yehuda Leib. Tova and Leo Ori Zimmer, in memory of her mother, Henya bat Rav Beryl, and her father, Aaron ben Yosef Mordechai. Judith and Michael Poretsky, in memory of her father, Yaakov Yitzchak ben Hersh Feivel. Perry and Jill Meltzer, in memory of his sister, Golda Leah bat David Halevi, and his mother, Malka bat Baruch. B. Pizer, in memory of her husband, Harav Yisrael Chaim ben David. Ira Grobert, in memory of his father, Shmuel Isaac ben Zev Yekutiel. Stephanie Gold and Fred Mortman, in memory of Jacqueline Santis Lapere, sister of Bruce Deutsch. The students of Rabbi Yisrael Leib Ed Kurtzer, in appreciation of 17 years of dedication as Maggid Shir of Daf Yomi. We have a day of learning, wishing a refuah shlema to Rabbi Dr. Moshe Kranzler, Rav Moshe Nachum ben Chana, from his friends at the Wolverton A Minyan. Marsha Brana, in memory of Anita Kornblitz's brother, Marvin Rosenberg. Okay, and that from the 12th, we have a day of learning by Judith and Michael Poretsky, in memory of her grandmother, Edechana bat Yosef. Okay, all right.
Today is the 14th.
I know, that was from the 12th. That was just got here. It was just, apparently they forgot it earlier. Okay, all right, and that is, right, we announced it yesterday, right, okay. All right, Hashem is having Aliyah. Hashem is having Aliyah, crank Rafia, Vati Yeshua, Hashem Etzliach, Chol B'nai Israel, a good to Ben Shtia. Okay.
Very good. It is good to announce Bob twice because of making the humor. That was not mine.
All right, gentlemen, we're going to, I'm going to begin this morning on the Nun Chet Amud Bet towards the very bottom. Okay. So the Gemara there picked up a marmar, azhara shalahen zohi mitatan. Okay, pointing out that the warning to the Noahides, okay, is such that it gives them the potential of a death penalty. Amar Ravina, right? Say that's where we're going to pick up. bottom of, like I say, it's probably Art Scroll, what, 58 B4, right? Okay, very bottom of the Amud there. Okay, what happens, says Samar Ravina. Okay, what happens? Afilu sheni b'Shabbat, even if they were, so he's once said that it was if they Noahides observe Shabbat. Ravina is saying no, even if they observe the second day of the week. In other words, even if they take a different day and they imitate and follow the Shabbat observances that we do, that's the case. V'lei chashev gabe sheva mitzvot. So let it count, let it be considered part of the 7 mitzvot of Bnei Noah that we saw before. Ki kach chashiv sheva al ta'aseh. Okay, what we see there is that that we have a situation where a negative prohibition would be part of the Noahide system of justice. Kum aseh, but positive commandments, lo kachashi, they would not be considered part of the Noahide system, legal system. So now I wanted to review that only because as we get to our new Amud this morning on the top of Nun Tet, Amud Aleph, we're going to see that there's a question about that view. Okay? So, but the Gemara says, Vahad dinan kam asehu. But don't we say that having a legal system means both incorporating positive commands to get up and do things, okay? V'kach chashiv, and therefore it has to be considered part of the entire Noahide system, both positive commandments to do things and negative commandments to refrain from the whole idea of not following the perversion of justice. Okay, kum aseh v'shev al ta'aseh ninhu, says the Gemara. Exactly that language, that you need the positive commandments to ensure that justice is served, but then you also need the negative commandments so that there's no perversion of justice. Okay? Va'amar Rabbi Yochanan, and says Rabbi Yochanan, what about the following? Oved kochavim she'osek b'Torah chayav mita. Okay, we're on Nun Tet, the third line. His statement is that a Gentile, an idol worshiper in particular. Okay, so we really have now almost 3 categories. We have an Israelite category. We have a Kuti category, which is sort of in between. And then we have the Oved Kochavim category. Okay?
Really a Noahide.
Okay, so what happened? Well, Noahide could be argued, could be you have. We'll see. Well, okay, so let's go on. Okay, Shenamar, as it says, is well, we'll get to it. Shenamar, okay, Torah Tzivalanu Moshe Morasha. Okay, all right, so what happens? Morasha, right? Okay, so what happens? The Pasuk says in Dvarim that God commanded us the Torah as an inheritance. Lanu Morasha. It is an inheritance, and for us it's an inheritance, below lahem, and not for them. So the Gemara says, Ulechashva, Gabi Sheva Mitzvot. So maybe we should consider it then, okay, this idea of learning, okay, as part of the 7 mitzvot b'nei Noach, says the Gemara. Okay, Manda Amar Morasha, according to the one who pronounces and reads the pasuk as Morasha, an inheritance, Migzol Kagazilah. Okay, by a Gentile studying it, it's as if he's stealing it from us. Okay, for it belongs to us. Manda Amar Morasa, but however, one who reads it a little differently and then understands it as okay, as a almost like a betrothed. Okay, hold on a second. Okay, what happened? I get thrown off of the Zoom. Right, that was saying, okay, so the point is, okay, do you consider both positive commands and negative commands part of the Noahide judicial system. That's the point. Okay. Exactly. Okay, so that's the issue. But that's the problem. Okay, that's the problem Gemara is asking. Man da'amar mu'urasa, but the one who understands it as like betrothed, dino kina'ara hamurasa de beskila. In that case, you would say that they would need to include something which we had previously said was only in the Jewish legal system, namely the case of a betrothed young girl who was involved in immoral, okay, behavior, and therefore would be punished by skila. That then should also apply in the Noahide system, as opposed to chenek, which we said death penalties applied to them in all cases. Meitive. But the Gemara says, hold on a second, we're going to challenge this. Haya Rabbi Meir Omer. Rabbi Meir said as follows: Minayin she'afilu oved kochavim ve'osek b'Torah shehu kekohen gadol. Where is it that how do we know that a Gentile, okay, who involves himself in the study of Torah is on a parallel with the Kohen Gadol? Shnei Amar, as we have a pasuk, Asher ya'aseh otam ha'adam v'chai bahem. One becomes involved in them and lives by them, follows them. Okay, what happens? Kohanim, Leviim, v'Yisraelim lo ne'amar. The pasuk does not spell out and limit Torah study to somebody in the status of a Kohen, Levi, or Israelite. Ela ha'adam, but it refers to any human being. Okay? Ha limadet she'afilu oved kochavim v'osek b'Torah, that even if the person is an idol worshiper, okay, and let's call idol worshiper here really, as Michael was suggesting, Ben Noach, a non-Jew, okay, v'osek b'Torah, and indulges in Torah study, harehu kekohen gadol, and therefore he is in a status like a Kohen Gadol. So what happens? Hatam b'sheva mitzvot didho. No, what we're talking about there, okay, is that they're involved in the study of their particular 7 mitzvot that they are commanded. Okay, that's the point. Okay, so Rabbi Yochanan here is referring to those sections that apply to them. Okay? Now we go on. Okay, we want to examine the Braita, which wanted to, there were a few Braitot, one large Braita really, that examine a number of suggestions of other kinds of mitzvahs that should be added to the 7 mitzvot. And we're going to quickly refer back to that discussion. Okay? Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel, what did he say, Omer? Af hadam min hachai. He wanted to add the example of the prohibition of eating blood from a living animal. Tanu Rabbanan, says the Braita. Ach basar benafsho damo lo tochelu. But we have a pasuk that clearly spells out. Ach, in other words, remember, ach is always limiting in language. Okay, so ach basar, even the flesh of the item, of the animal, the blood should not eat it. Ze aver min achai. That applies to a limb from a living animal. Okay, and maybe it doesn't apply then to the blood of the animal. Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel Omer, he says, af hadam min hachai. No, according to him, he says it does apply also to the blood of the living animal. Ma'itama, what's the reasoning to Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel? What's his reasoning? Kare Bey, read it as follows. He says, basar benafsho lo tochal, damo benafsho lo tochal. Okay, you can read the pasuk as applying to 2 things. Number 1, that the flesh from the body of the animal one should not eat. Its blood from the animal one should not eat. V'Rabbanan. And what about how the rabbis understand it? Okay, hahu Lemishre shratzim hu da'ata. Okay, maybe it might come to permit, okay, the blood of shratzim. Okay, that this is the case. All right. So what happens? Kiyotse b'davar ata omer. Okay, and maybe here we might say, in a similar manner, Israelite would inform us of the same prohibition. By the way, put a note by number 14 on Art Scroll in this case. Okay? Rak chazak levelti achal hadam, ki hadam hu hanefesh v'gomer. Okay? Pasuk citing by Dvarim. Okay, to be again warning not to eat the blood. Okay, right? Because the blood is the life essence of the animal. Okay, how do we interpret that? I'm going to include what's in the parenthesis. Rak chazak levilti achal hadam ze aver min hachai. Okay, we can darshan that pasuk if we would choose to. One part of the pasuk prohibiting eating from the limb of a living animal. Ki hadam hu ha'nefesh ze dam min hachai. Okay, and the second part of the pasuk, and use that to darshan our second element, that from the blood of the living animal you should not consume that either. Okay, v'rabanan. Okay, then how does the Rabbanan, how do they darshan the pasuk? Okay, about blood. Okay, namely hahu ladam hakaza. That refers to blood that is drawn out by bloodletting. Remember, that was a common practice. Either they used leeches or they used, that's why the barber pole has white and red on it. If anybody knows that story. Okay. Okay. All right. So either case, v'rabanan, hahu ladam hakazah. As I said, that's bloodletting. Shehanashama yotz'a bo hida'ata. Okay, that the essence flows out. That's why, and Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, that there is a strong attitude about the fact that if you get a wound and it's bleeding, okay, the prohibition really is that you should not suck the blood in that situation. It's a you're patur, but it's really a derabanan because it's a derabanan. Right. Okay. So that's, I just wanted to have us associate that with this example. Right. Exactly. All right. Okay. So we're about halfway down the Amud as we now get to a new point. Lamali lemichtav levnei Noach, v'lamali lemishnei b'Sinai. Why is it, asks the Gemara, that we have some things directed towards the Gentiles, okay, for their law code? And why is it that there are times when some of the same laws are repeated and when they were given at Sinai? In other words, if you assume that the law was given, okay, earlier in the Torah, okay, to call everybody, why was there a necessity to repeat it and specifically give it at Har Sinai to Jews? Okay, so we're going to pick up this motif. Kida Rabbi Yossi Barabi Chanina, according to Rabbi Yossi Barabi Chanina, the Amar Rabbi Yossi Barabi Chanina, who says, Kol mitzvah shene'amra levnei Noach, any commandment that was recited to Noahides, v'nishnet b'Sinai, and was repeated then at Sinai, lazeh ulazeh ne'amra, both for these and these it was recited. Okay? V'levnei Noach, but if it was given to levnei Noach, v'lo nishnet b'Sinai, but was not repeated at Sinai, liYisrael ne'emra. Okay, it was said for the Jew. Lo v'lo livnei Noach, and not for Noahites. Okay, now it sounds a little contradictory, so Gemara is going to have to come back and deal with that statement. Okay, so we're not going to give an answer to it right now, but I agree. Okay, it seems problematic. And that's why the Gemara is going to have to come back and question it. Va'anu, and for us, ein lanu ela gid hanasheh. Okay, our only initial example that we could think of, okay, would be the example of gid hanasheh. That would indicate that difference. Okay, va'aliba the Rabbi Yehuda, and that would be based on the perspective of Rabbi Yehuda. However, the Gemara picks up Amar Mar. We've already just said Kol mitzvah shene'amra levnei Noach v'nishneit b'Sinai lezeh ulezeh ne'amra. Was it really the case that we find that a mitzvah commandment said to Noahides and repeated at Sinai was given for both of them? Question mark. Adraba, just the opposite as we come back. Mideshenishneit b'Sinai. The fact that it was repeated at Sinai, Li Yisrael Me'emra, that was said specifically to Jews, V'lo Livnei Noach, and not to the Noahide. So the Gemara picks up and says here, okay, for example, Mideitne Avodat Kochavim B'Sinai, for example, okay, as the fact that the prohibition of idol worship was given at Sinai. V'ishkachan da'anesh ovdei kochavim iluya, which I would find then, says the Gemara, that therefore Gentiles, Noahides, who worship idol worship, they should be punished. No? Shma mina lezev lezen emra. If we're basing it on the statement that that's mitzvah, okay, or that lav, that prohibition was given both to these and to these. 1 second, says the Gemara. Levnei Noach v'lo nishneit b'Sinai. L'Yisrael me'amra. We have a text that tells us that it was said, if it was said to the Noahides and not repeated at Sinai, okay, it was given to the Israelites. V'lo levnei Noach, and not to the Noahides. Adraba, just the opposite. Midelo nishneit b'Sinai, when it was not repeated at Sinai. Livnei Noach ne'emra v'lo Yisrael, exclamation mark with a question mark. We said there that it was given to the Noahides and not to the Israelites. Okay, leka miyadam. Okay, that we don't have that situation, says in our knowledge. The Yisrael shari v'lo oved kochavim asur, that something would be permitted to the Jews and then made forbidden to Gentiles, to Noahides. Okay, whatever. V'lo, no, says the Gemara. V'harei yafet Torah. But what about the example of Yafet Torah, where there we understand that it's permitted to Jews, okay, who are, okay, but it's not permitted to Noahides. Okay, well, in any case, what happens? Says the Gemara, Hatam mishum delav b'nei kibush ninu. That's because we're arguing that the Noahides generally are not conquerors. V'harei, okay, pachot mishava pruta. Okay, or what about the case where we had the argument that the Gemara brought up a couple days ago, that when something was stolen less than that minimum amount, that that there was a Noahide law, but the Jews were not so picayune about that. Okay, answers the Gemara, Hatam, in that case, Mishum delav b'nei mechila ninhu. That's because the Noahides were not forgiving on the small amounts. Okay? Kol mitzvah, so we pick up. Kol mitzvah shene'amra levnei Noach v'nishneit b'Sinai. Any law, commandment that was recited for the Noahides, v'nishneit, and it was repeated at Sinai, lezeh v'lezeh ne'amra. And we say that for these and for these. It was said, hooray. Okay, so wait a second, says the Gemara. How about another example that was only, right? V'harei mila. What about circumcision? Okay, shene'amra levnei Noach Why? Because it was given also to the sons of Noah, right? B'nai Noah. Dichtiv, why? Because there's a pasuk that says, Va'ata et riti tishmor. Namely, the pasuk saying that you should observe my covenant. Okay, keep my covenant. All right. Vinishnet b'Sinai. And then it was also repeated at Sinai, with based on the pasuk, Uviyom hashmini imo. On the 8th day, you should become circumcised. Yisrael ne'emra. And that was specifically cited for the Jews. Velo livnei Noah. And not for the Noahites. So in other words, yes, it would seem to imply that they have a requirement of circumcision, but the only difference is that ours is on the 8th day and theirs is at another point in time. Yes. Well, we're going to get to that in just a second. Baruch Shekivanta. We're going to get to it in a moment. Okay? Okay, but remember, there is a practice among, like, what? Okay? That they do circumcision as well. Okay, anyway, what happens? Right. Vinishnet b'Sinai. Okay. Hashmini yimo l'Yisrael nema. Okay, now. Below Levnei Noach. All right, we're now fourth line on the Amud. Hahu lemishrei Shabbat hu da'ata. No, says the Gemara. Maybe that came in order to permit them to observe the Sabbath. Okay? Rest. Right. No.
Do the meal on Shabbos.
To do the Milah on Shabbos. That's what it is. Right. Okay, right. Okay, I didn't see my note. Okay, Ba Yom. That's what it is. On that day.
Therefore, it's not repeated.
Okay, so it's unique to that. Okay, Va'afilu b'Shabbat, even if it were to be that 7th day would be Shabbos. Okay, V'harei. So the Gemara says, wait a second. What about another example? You talked about circumcision. How about the issue of procreation? Okay, V'harei Pirya V'Rivya. Okay, procreation. Shene Emra Livnei Noach. That was told to Bnei Noach, as it's written, Dichtiv, Vatem Peru Urvu. Okay, go forth and multiply. Okay, Vinishnet, and then it's repeated, B'Sinai at Sinai. Lechem or lehem, Shuvu lachem la'ohalechem. Okay, when it says go back to your tents, the rabbinic explanation is that therefore go back and procreate. Okay, because they were separated, men and women. Okay, at Har Sinai. All right, Yisrael Memra, and therefore that was said to the Jewish people, Velo livnei Noach, and not to the Noahites. So what happens? Says the Gemara, Hahu lechol davar shebabinyan. Okay, I'm going to loosely translate that. That applies to anything that has an issue of numbers. Okay, Sarich minyan. Okay, echad lahatirohu da'ata. Okay, and therefore what happens? That there was a requirement of a number there. Okay, in order to permit for it to come.
The number that's
Sarich
talking about
minyan.
here is a vote of the Sanhedrin.
No,
That's what Davar Shabamenya means. Davar Shabamenya means you need a vote of the Sanhedrin.
is that what?
That's how he explains it.
Okay.
Steinsaltz explains
Sarich
it.
minyan achar.
Any matter that was prohibited
Right.
by an
Minyan
official
acher lahatirohu.
At any time a Gezerah is proposed, you need an at least equivalent authority, a larger or a more Pashuv Sanhedrin, to undo it. And we learn that concept from this pasuk because it said specifically for the next 3 days stay away from the vines, and then after Sinai, God specifically said go home. So from that we learn that if you make the Gezerah, it cannot be undone unless the undoer is equal or greater in authority. And that's an idiom covering that idea.
All right.
is an idiom. It doesn't mean a number.
Okay, that's interesting. Only because I did not. Is that in the notes in Art Scroll?
That's Gemara's brachas.
Yeah, no, I know the Gemara in Brachas. I didn't ask.
Spelled out.
I asked if there was a note to that effect in Art
I
Scroll.
have no idea.
All right, Ihachi.
Oh,
Okay,
Steinseltz.
That's what I was told.
Ihachi. Okay, if that's the case, okay. Ihachi kol chada v'chada nami. In each individual case, nami. Okay, also. Nema mishum milta at itne. So maybe that was simply added as an additional detail. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. Hachikama. This is what we're implying here. Ashara mahader umitnabeba. Okay. So here we're saying what happens is that we have the issue of the warning coming back and as the follow through in terms of that. Lamali, why is that the case? Ve'ein lanu ela gid hanasha bilvad. Okay, but maybe we're saying that this is simply again an added detail to show the situation that there is some differences between the Noahide, okay, and that's law and the Jewish law, and it's not repeated at Sinai. Okay, va'aliba the Rabbi Yehuda, and that follows the view of Rabbi Yehuda. I just want to make a quick note here. Hold on. Okay. Va'aliba the Rabbi Yehuda. Hani nami here too. Lo itne, it's not broad. Hani itne leshum milta ba'alma. Okay. And here maybe it's brought again as some sort of additional detail. Ha, he's saying regarding the situation that we discussed regarding procreation or circumcision, lo itne klal, where that was not brought in total. Ibayat ema, or if you want, I would say, mila meikara la Avraham hu dekama. Okay, that's your point. Okay, that actually that was given maybe particularly to Abraham, who decay originally, and specifically, who dekat mizhaher le Rachmana, and that was the case that the Kadosh Baruch Hu specifically focused that milabi to the to Abraham and his progeny. Va'ata et briti tishmor. Okay, namely that you would observe my covenant. Ata v'zaracha acharecha ledorotam. You and your progeny after you for generations. Ata v'zaracha in. Yes, you and your progeny, yes. Inish acharina, lo, but other people not. Okay. Ela me'ata. But from here, then, what about the following? As Gemara asks, B'nei Yishmael lechayvo. Does this mean that the sons of Ishmael, in other words, the Arab population, that they also have an obligation? Wait, we've got a pasuk. Ki b'Yitzchak yikarei lechazera. No, it's only with Yitzchak do we actually call him the actual heir, Heir, progeny of Abraham. In that case, oh well, if you're saying that, we'll ask another question. B'nei Esav l'chayvo. Okay, after all, okay, Yitzchak had two sons. Okay, Yaakov and Esav. What about them? Maybe they should be required to have circumcision. Okay, Yitzchak velo kol Yitzchak. Okay, with Yitzchak and not all others of his progeny. Problem, Matkifla Rav Oshaya, Ela Me'ata, says Rav Yoshaya in a challenge. What do we have here? Rather, B'nei Keturah lo lechayvo. Does that mean that the sons of Keturah, okay, are not obligated to have circumcision? Okay. Ha'amar Rabbi Yossi bar Abin, responds Rabbi Yossi bar Abin, V'itema Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina, and others say it was Rabbi Yossi bar Rabbi Chanina, et briti efer. We have a pasuk that says that one didn't observe, okay, the covenant. L'rabot b'nei keturah, and that applies to the b'nei keturah, that they do not have that requirement. Okay, all right. They may have the requirement, but they're not expected to fulfill it. Okay. Amar Rab Yehuda, says Rab Yehuda Amar Rab. Adam Harishon, we get to a new issue, coming back to the question of eating the limb from the live animal. Okay. Adam Harishon, lo hutar lo basar la achila. According to Rav Yehuda, in the name of Rav, Adam Harishon, first man, was not permitted to eat meat. Why? Dichtiv, lach pasuk, lachem yihye la'achla, u'lechol chayat haaretz. Okay, that you should be given the produce, that for you it's to be eaten, and the animals of the land. Velo chayat haaretz lachem, but not the animals to you. In other words, you don't eat meat. Ukeshebau b'nei Noach. However, when the children of Noach came, what happened? Hitir lahem, that was permitted to them to eat meat. Shene'emar, as it says, ki yerek esev natati lachem et kol. Okay, in other words, just like you were permitted in the past to eat grass and produce or growth from the land, so now you'll be permitted to eat meat. Okay? Yachol lo yehe ever min hachai nohegbo. Maybe I might say that in that case there was not an issue of eating a limb from a living animal. Maybe it wasn't included in. Okay, it was possible. Talmud lomar. However, the pasuk says, "Ach," again limiting. Basar b'nafsho damo lo tochelu. Okay, here again it clearly spells in the pasuk that the flesh of the item, its blood you shouldn't eat. So maybe wait a second, says the Gemara. Yechol af l'shratzim. Okay, maybe that would permit eating the limbs of insects. Okay, all right. Okay, so what happens? Talmud lomar ach. Here too we have the limiting phrase ach. Umay Talmud.
Rabbi Norman Lamb, the front of the bracha, once pointed out that this Indian of eating meat that was told to the Bnei Noah,
yeah,
was like a kiyum hamitzvah. Hashem wanted them to eat meat. Why? Because the whole problem with the flood was that all the various species were all getting all mixed up together. Right? The men, animals, it was a terrible hashchasa. And Hashem wanted that there should be a clear separation between humans and non-humans by telling humans you can eat them. They're not you. You're human and they're others. That's the way he understood it. So that would be in opposition to Rav Kook. Rav Kook said that the ideal state of man is to be vegetarian. He was saying Hashem made a takana that you should not be vegetarian.
Yeah, that's interesting. Thank you for sharing.
There's a Gemara that said when you recognize the enormity of the act of killing an animal, so you have a hand. And there was also an issue whether in the midbone they were the only meat they were allowed to eat was the public portions of Bana. And when they got to Israel, the Gemara discusses there's a machlokes. Does that rule still apply? And they paskin that since it's impossible every time you want a hamburger to schlep from Akko to Yerushalayim, they would broaden the rule that you can still eat meat that's whole meat, but they have to use the technology of the bones that shlit. That's where it's a Torah.
Okay, thank you both of you. Okay, let's pick up then. So what happens? So the Gemara asks, Umay Talmuda, what's the basis for the learning? Amar Rav Huna, Damo is blood. Mi shedamav chaluk mi besaro. A situation where the blood is separate from the flesh. Okay? Yatsu shratzim she'ein daman chaluk mi besaram. Therefore, that's it excludes the permission to eat.
No, allows you to do Abram in a type from insects.
No, it doesn't permit you. It says that the flesh, because the blood is not separate from the flesh.
You're allowed to eat.
That's this issue. Okay? She'ein daman chaluk mi besaram. That the blood is not separate from the flesh.
What does that mean? What does that mean? Biology perspective. What does that mean? Yeah. They don't have veins.
Right. Okay, that's the case. Well, they're thinking more in terms of things like lizards or things like that.
No.
Okay,
But that the blood is
that the blood is part of the flesh. It's there together. Okay, and therefore you can't eat it. May tive, but I wouldn't order it anyway. Okay. May tive. We'll challenge this with the following. Okay, let's go on. Urdu b'degat hayam, and you should rule over the we'll call it the life, the fish of the sea. My lav la'achila. Don't we mean that when it says you can rule over it? And this ties in very good to your comment here, by the way. Okay, that would mean that you have permission to eat it. Lo lemlacha, says he. No, for work. V'dagim b'nei melacha ninhu. Okay, somebody asks, okay, you're saying fish are eligible for working? And yes, sure. Okay, but like kiderechava, like said by Rechava, the by Rechava, as Rechava asks, okay, it's probably the only question he ever asked in the whole Shas. Okay, okay, hinhig, okay, hanahig ba'u'eza, uvashibuta mai. What about the fact that you have let's say, a wagon or something led by a goat? Okay, and a kind of fish. Okay, what's the situation there? Tashma. Okay, so that's the question. Doesn't that show that it's possible to have? Okay, if you think of just think of a porpoise, for example, or a dolphin, that could lead theoretically something. Okay, exactly. Wait, we're going to get to even more animals. Okay, what is it? Tashma. What about the following Braita? Uba'of hashamayim. What about the birds in the skies, right? My love la'achila. Don't we say here too that this is to rule over them means that you could eat them? No, says the Gemara. No, melacha, also for work. Why? Va'ofit b'nei melacha ninhu. Okay, but don't we say that there are birds that can be used for, okay, for all sorts of work? Yes, and yes. Kedabai Rava, as was questioned by Rava bar Rav Nehuna, who says, Dash ba'avazim v'tarnagolim, that you use geese and chickens for the purpose of threshing the land, threshing the grain. Okay? Also, you may remember, if you studied any medieval history, that they used falcons to capture other birds. Okay? Okay? All right, so what happened?
Carrier pigeons.
All right, carrier pigeon. The Rebbe Yossi bar Rebbe Yehuda. All right, what is it? Tashma, listen to the following. Uvechol chaya haromeset al haaretz. And the pasuk then went on to say, in any animal that crawls on the earth. Hahu la'atuye nachashu da'ata. That comes to include the snake. How? Detanya, because we have a Braita. Rabbi Shimon ben Manasseh says as follows. Okay, Chaval al shamash gadol she'eved min ha'olam. Woe to the fact that we lost a great servant. Okay, for the people. Okay, how? She'ilmalei. Okay, lo nitkale el nachash, were such that the servant the serpent, I'm sorry, had not been cursed, kol echad ve'echad miYisrael, hayu mizdamin lo shnei nechashim tovim, that every person would have got two two snakes. Okay, two large. I think it's super snake. Yeah, large. I thought of this as I'm preparing. I'm thinking, can you imagine having? I had a colleague. Some of you actually know him. Okay, who used to have pet snakes. Okay, and he lived in Teaneck for a number of years. Okay, now he's moved from that community. He lives in Eretz Yisrael. I don't know if he keeps snakes there, but he used to have in a large, like aquarium, okay, boa constrictor. Okay, I think that's what he had. Jerry, you might know better than I. All right. Okay. Okay. All right. So what happens? All right. So what could you do with these two super snakes, right? What could you do? Echad mishagaru letzafon. One, right? One mishagru. One would travel up to the north to the cold lands. The echad mishagru ledarom, and one would travel to the south. Okay, and therefore they would be able to. What would they do? La'avilo sandal bavanin tovim va'avanim tovot umargaliot. Okay, these animals would burrow into the earth, the snakes, and therefore they would pull out precious stones, precious gems, etc., etc. Okay, right, right. La'avilo, right? Okay, so we said the vavanim tovot umargaliot. V'lo od, and not just that. Ela shamaf shilin ritzuat tachet pnavo, but what you would attach a strap to the tail of the snake. Umotzi ba'afar leganatov v'lechorbato. Not only that, but then the animal, cause it crawls, okay, it would gather earth and transfer dirt from one area to another area. In other words, for your garden and things like
That's
that.
why it's called caterpillar.
All right, all right, all right. Uh, 2/3 of a pun. Okay, Meitive. We'll challenge this. Haya Rabbi Yehuda, this is Rabbi Yehuda ben Temo says, Adam Harishon, the first man, and this Mesav began Eden. He would recline in a nice recliner. Okay, think of this image. Okay, in his backyard, the Garden of Eden. And what would happen? Haya, all right, that's what he would do. Vayu malachei asharet solin lo basar. Okay, and the angels would make a barbecue for Adam Harishon as he's reclining on his recliner in the Garden of Eden. Okay. Okay. No, come on. Sure he did. Come on. All right. Okay. What happened, Malach, right? Umasananin lo and not only would they feed him barbecue, but they would take the wine and they would strain the wine for him. Okay, Hitzitz bo nachash, the serpent saw what the life that Adam Arishon had there. V'ra'ah bichvodo, okay, and he saw what the way the angels were honoring him. V'nitkana, and it became jealous, right? Bo, and right? Hatam bebasar hayored min hashamayim, and that was meat that came from heaven. Okay, he had divine hashgacha. Mi ika basar hayored min hashamayim. Is it really possible, asks the Gemara, that meat can come down from heaven? And yes, says the Gemara, ki had the Rabbi Shimon ben Chalafta, like the story of Rabbi Shimon ben Chalafta, havaka azil ba'archa, who has happened to walking along the roadway, hagu bo hinach oyota, and a group of young lions came out and confronted him, right? What happens? The Hagu Nahame, la'ape, and they were roaring in front of him. Okay, Amar, and he says, Hakfirim shoagim latrof, that the lions are calling out to look for their prey, okay, to attack. What happens? Nachitu le tarte atmata. Two slabs of meat came down from heaven. Heaven, right? Chada achlua. One of them the lions ate. V'chada shavkua, and one had left. Okay, what did he do? Aite va'ata lebe midrasha. He took that piece of meat and he brings it to the base of midrash, wants to check the hashgacha. Right. All right, bye ale, and he asks, right? Davar tamehu zeh or davar tahor? Okay, he wants to ask, what's the hashgacha on this? Right. Right. Right.
Well, that's the question. That's the code.
Right. Amarle, he says. Okay. All right. Amarle, ein davar tamei yored min hashamayim. Nothing that's tamei comes from him. By mine. So he was Rabbi Zera of Rabbi Zera Merebi Abahu. Yardalo demut chamor. If the meat came down in the shape of a donkey. Okay, Mahu. What's the status then? Amarle. So somebody says to him, Yarud Gala. This is not a nice compliment, okay, to tell somebody, okay? And Chas, Art School has a note here. Chas v'sholem, one rabbi should call another rabbi such a nasty term, okay? All right? But we know otherwise. Okay. Ha-amre, all right? Ha-amre alei, they said to him, Ein davar tomei min yored min hashamayim. Nothing tomei ever falls from heaven. And that's where we'll stop today.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay? So everybody have a good Shabbos and pray that the meat you get from either aroma or your or elsewhere has the right hashgacha. All right.